Okay, so we can now carry on with the last of the 7 ways of giving up the defilements, all the defilement sutta. And as we have seen, that is done by development. And the particular development that is spoken of there is the 7 factors of awakening, the Satta Sambojjhanga in Pali. And there's many different ways of explaining these 7 factors. And one of those ways is through the process of mindfulness of breathing. Yeah, mindfulness of breathing, that sutta actually explains how these 7 factors are developed and actually goes beyond them as well to some extent. So for that reason, we're going to now have a look at the mindfulness of breathing sutta. And it is, I think, a very significant sutta for many reasons. First of all, because it occurs in many places in the suttas. You find this basic idea of 16 steps of mindfulness of breathing. This is a kind of a setup, a structure, whatever you want to call it, that is found in many places in the suttas. And it is said, as we shall see in a second, to fulfill the Satipatthana meditation. So if you wonder what Satipatthana meditation is all about, and you've been a bit confused about that, and people give different instructions, well, it really can be summarized in just mindfulness of breathing, which is kind of handy, simple. So let's have a look at this. This is found in the middle-length sayings of the Buddha, Sutta number 118, usually translated as mindfulness of breathing. You could call it awareness of the breath. Sometimes people use the words like focus on the breath. I think perhaps awareness is a good way of thinking about it, because when you say focus, you imply a bit of willpower. You're forcing your mind onto the breath. But awareness just means that you are kind of aware of what's happening without necessarily using any will. So maybe awareness of breathing is a good way of thinking about this. Mindfulness is a bit sort of wishy-washy, not sure exactly what it means, but I think awareness perhaps is more clear. Okay, so this is how it goes. This is again Bhante Sujato's translation of this particular sutta. So I have heard at one time the Buddha was staying near Savatthi in the eastern monastery, the stilt longhouse of Megara's mother, together with several well-known senior disciples, such as the Venerables Sariputta, Mahamoggallana, Mahakassapa, Mahakachana, Mahakotita, Mahakappina, Mahachunda, Anuruddha, Revata, Ananda, and others. So this eastern monastery, Pubbarama, this is the kind of the second large monastery in Savatthi. The other one is, of course, Anathapindika's monastery. And the stilt longhouse of Megara's mother. This is, Megara's mother is Visakha. You know, the Lady Visakha, one of the Buddha's most famous female lay disciples. And she was known as Megara's mother. Megara was her father-in-law, according to the story. And she kind of got him to look at things differently, basically become a Buddhist. So she kind of sort of made him follow the Dhamma, essentially. That's why she was called Megara's mother. She was a spiritual mother, not a kind of ordinary mother. And stilt house is an interesting one. Often this stilt house, pasada in Pali, is often translated as mansion. But Buddhist monks don't usually live in mansions. But so the idea is really a stilt house. In India, you have the monsoon, a lot of rain, you have dangerous animals, kind of thieves and robbers, so stilt houses are quite useful. So your house would be standing on stilts and make it only accessible if you had a ladder, and then you pull the ladder up after you enter the house. So they were quite useful constructions there at that time. Anyway, that's a bit of a side issue. So the Buddha was staying here with several well-known senior disciples. And these disciples you see here, this list, these are kind of some of the very most famous of the Buddha's disciples. They're kind of at the very top of the hierarchy, so to speak. So, and that's kind of interesting. Why is that mentioned? it often doesn't really say all that much about who is present, or they might mention one monk or one person the Buddha is speaking to, but here they kind of make this long list, and you can take it that the reason why this is mentioned is because it is considered important. This is an important topic. All the senior disciples that are there, either to hear it or to pass it on or to authenticate it for their disciples or whatever it is. It kind of gives weight to this particular sutta. So for those who don't know, Venerable Sariputta is kind of considered the Buddha's right-hand monk. He is the one who kind of carries on the teaching if the Buddha doesn't teach. He's the wisest monk after the Buddha. And you see a shrine like here, if you have Venerable Sariputta, he will always be on the right side of the Buddha. That's where he will be here. And as I like to say, almost all disciples of the Buddha, they always have their hands in Anjali like this. There's one exception, and that is Venerable Sariputta. He sits like this. You kind of get the feeling there's something special about this monk when you see him. And Venerable Mahamoggallana is the one supposedly with the greatest psychic powers. Mahakassapa was very famous for his asceticism. Mahakachana for expounding the Dhamma, Mahakotata for his analytical abilities, Mahakapina, I can't remember what he's famous for, he was famous for something. Mahachunda was a brother of Venerable Sariputta, and Anuruddha was famous for his divine eye, and he was a cousin of the Buddha. Revata, he was also a cousin of the Buddha, I think, and Ananda, another cousin of the Buddha, who also was the Buddha's attendant, and others. As if that wasn't enough. There were more there. And then there is a long section which I have just taken out, elided, as they call it. And then it starts with the idea of the actual discourse on mindfulness of breathing here. And the Buddha says, mendicants, when mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it is very fruitful and beneficial. Mindfulness of breathing, when developed and cultivated, fulfills the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation. The 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation, this is Satipatthana, when developed and cultivated, fulfills the 7 awakening factors, which is what we are looking at now. And the 7 awakening factors, when developed and cultivated, fulfill knowledge and freedom. So as I just mentioned before, if you really develop and cultivate anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing, it fulfills the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation. And this is very significant because if you read the Satipatthana Sutta, Satipatthana Sutta is the sutta on mindfulness meditation. It is the main sutta which is almost everyone reads to understand what this is about. If you read that sutta, it is divided into 4 sections. The first section is the contemplation of the body. Then you have contemplation of feeling, contemplation of the mind, and the last one, like contemplation of mental qualities or principles, as Bhante Sujato has it. And in that sutta, it is only the first, the contemplation of the body, which talks about mindfulness of breathing. So many people say, you do mindfulness of breathing for a while, that's kind of the preliminary stuff, and then you go on to the feelings of the body and that kind of thing, which is the standard way of Goenka meditation, for example. You do mindfulness of breathing for about 3 days or something, and then you go on to contemplating the feelings and the impermanence of the feelings. But according to this, you don't need to do that. According to this, all you have to do is practice anapanasati. So it's to be clear about that. So that instruction in the Satipatthana Sutta is not complete. It's only a partial instruction for mindfulness of breathing here. So it is an important point, and I think many people miss that. And you miss that if you're part of the Goenka tradition. Goenka tradition has a lot of good things to be said for it. It introduces many people to the Dhamma. You get some basic idea of Buddhism. But there are also some, what I would consider, views that are a bit dubious from the sutta point of view in the Goenka tradition. This idea of experiencing sankharas and making an end of kamma and this kind of stuff, which is not really part of the sutta tradition. And so it's good to get a broader understanding here. Otherwise, you might miss out on so much of the word of the Buddha if you hold too closely to some of these traditions. Anyway, just a minor point is that's always true, and that's why it is so nice to come back for yourself, really, to the suttas and try to see what is there. And then, when you do the mindfulness meditation, you fulfill the 7 factors of awakening, which is what we have just been looking at. Yeah, this is what this developing is all about. And if you fulfill that, well, then you fulfill knowledge and vision. And knowledge and vision fulfilled means full awakening here. Yeah, knowledge is the insight into the nature of reality. It's understanding impermanence, understanding suffering, understanding non-self, especially in relation to the 5 personality aspects, the 5 khandhas. That is what knowledge is. And liberation is liberation from all the problems. Yeah, liberation from suffering first and foremost, but also liberation from all the defilements of the mind that distort our perceptions and understanding of the world. So these are the 2 things that often awakening is said to mean, yeah, in Buddhism, knowledge and liberation. So, and all of this can be done just by watching the breath. Yeah, isn't that kind of cool? The breath, this humble thing that is always there. We always hang out with the breath. We're never really aware of it. We never thank the breath for keeping us alive, but without the breath, we wouldn't go very far. Yeah, but this beautiful, the breath is always there, and this breath can be transformed into the most magnificent object of attention, as we shall see very shortly in the sutta. This simple, down-to-earth thing, nothing fancy, nothing very kind of esoteric religious teaching, this very down-to-earth stuff. Real religion, real spiritual life, it actually turns out to be very boring here. All you have to do is watch the breath, yeah? There's nothing real. But actually, it seems boring on the surface. But the point of it is that it's down to earth. Yeah, it doesn't kind of make you take off flights of fancy and all of these kind of things. It's, you really kind of base yourself on simple things. That's great, because it gets very interesting anyway. Yeah, this is kind of the point of this. It gets really magnificent as you practice this simple mindfulness of breathing. So that is what we're going to look at now. And it takes you all the way to the full awakening on the Buddhist path. So it's really cool. Okay, how is mindfulness of breathing developed and cultivated to be very fruitful and beneficial? It's when a mendicant has gone to a wilderness, or to a root of a tree, or to an empty hut. They sit down cross-legged, with their body straight, and establish mindfulness right there. Just mindful, they breathe in. Mindful, they breathe out. So this is the preliminary instruction before you start mindfulness of breathing. Yeah? And as so often, the preliminary instruction is often the most important, because you get that right, then everything else tends to flow. Because meditation is largely an automatic process. You just have to sit back, allow things to be, not get involved. And because it is automatic, it is the preliminaries that you put into place are often the most important. So what are these preliminaries? Well, the first thing to notice here is that it is all about seclusion again. Yeah, like I mentioned before. Gone to a wilderness, the root of a tree, an empty hut. This is all about seclusion. One of the reasons I said that while we have individual rooms and even individual bathrooms here at Jhana Grove, to afford you some of that seclusion. That's also why the meditation center is set right here in the forest, in quite a long way from the city here. Yeah, so seclusion again, this kind of fundamental aspect. This is when you know that you're dealing with real meditation. Yeah, I was going to say not Mickey Mouse meditation. That's a bit kind of being a bit harsh. But this is the real Buddhist meditation. There are other, you can meditate in many ways, yeah, and there's nothing wrong with meditating in the city and meditating, trying to purify yourself. It's all okay, and it's really unfair to call it Mickey Mouse meditation, but it is, the point is that Buddhism has a very high bar, yeah, for these things, a high bar to clear. Meditation really begins at this point, because this is when you have real mindfulness, yeah? When you are powerful, when you have the ability to watch the breath without using force, just being with it, and then moving on to all of these stages that are spoken about. We shall see those shortly here. So this is why seclusion is mentioned at the very beginning, because mindfulness is already assumed to be established. So you are ready for seclusion. You have sufficient mindfulness and mental development to be ready for that kind of seclusion. Staying in the forest by yourself or whatever it might take. So, then you sit down. Breath meditation happens while you are seated, breathing meditation, because it is subtle. It is not something that you want to do while walking around. Like Ajahn Brahmali says, if you get into jhana while you're doing walking meditation, you just walk into the wall. You don't know what's going on anymore. So to avoid that, you sit down. You can't sit. Sitting is kind of safe. You don't have to worry about that. So it is a sitting meditation, because it's very subtle, it's very refined. You don't want to be distracted by movement and all of these kind of things. And you sit down cross-legged. So if you can't sit cross-legged, there's no chance for you. You had it, you stuffed, there's nothing you can... Sometimes people take it like this, they really like that, but it's being a bit too kind of strict about it. The reason why it has cross-legged there is because that was the way they sat at the time of the Buddha. This is kind of how it was very common. It was the way they would do meditation practice. But it is not necessary. It's a nice posture if you can do it. But it's more important to be comfortable, to be at ease. If you find yourself stressed out and you have to move all the time or whatever, it's better to find another posture. Find one of these little meditation benches, find a nice chair for yourself and then sit. There are many people that I know who get really good meditation by sitting on a chair or even by lying down. If you have a body that is really packing up and it doesn't want to do the right thing and is always painful and problematic, you can also lie down. It's actually it's a perfectly acceptable meditation posture here. So sitting cross-legged is kind of great if you can do it. If you can't do it, then don't worry too much. Use any other posture here. So sitting down cross-legged, the body straight, and because when the body is straight, then you gain a degree of clarity in the mind. Again, it is about the right time and place. If you are very tired in the beginning, you don't want to force yourself to sitting straight when you are very tired. So if you are starting out with meditation, you're just relaxing, then you can kind of sit back and lean against the wall for a while, or lean against the back of the chair, and maybe even nod off for a while and snore a bit, and then kind of come out of it afterwards, and then your mind is clear. And I know many monks who do precisely that, and they do nod off for 10 or 15 minutes, and then, come back to reality, and then the mind is clear, and then they are ready to meditate properly. So it's just that tiredness of the mind through interaction with people, etc., which then kind of needs to kind of get that alleviated, and then clarity returns, and then you can meditate properly. And then the body often just straightens itself, because you can feel, okay, now I'm ready, I'm clear. So then you kind of straighten up, and then the clarity kind of comes with that straight body even more powerfully. So be wise about this. Don't force yourself to do things that don't feel right. Feel the body, feel the mind, know yourself, trust your own judgment to some extent. If you have doubts, ask a question from someone who's experienced, and then you will kind of be heading in the right direction. So then these are some of the preliminaries. Then comes the most important of all these preliminaries, and that is you should establish mindfulness right there. Satting parimukkhang uppatapetva is the Pali for that. And so this is the most important thing. So the idea here is that you have to establish mindfulness before you can do this meditation. And this is why, when you come here and you start out meditating, every time you should kind of make sure, you should check whether your mindfulness is established first of all. Do you have a degree of clarity? Do you have a sharpness of the mind? Are you present, or are you kind of somewhere overseas, or where are you with your mind? And this becomes then the thing to watch out for every time you sit down. And if you come from a busy, ordinary life, your mind is guaranteed to be busy and tired, especially the first couple of days. So So you just learn to enjoy the place, you learn to relax, you sleep a bit extra. Sometimes people sleep kind of, solidly for a couple of days before they kind of emerge from the bed, and then they kind of, okay, and now I'm ready to, to do the meditation practice. So this is the most important thing here. And so this ability, learning how to allow the mindfulness to arise, guiding your mind. And this is what a lot of the things we've been talking about on this retreat are about. Having less interest in the world outside, moving away from that, and then allowing the present moment to become solidly established. Also being able to give rise to those things that makes the present moment joyful and happy. This is so important. Mindfulness arises when you are enjoying yourself in the present. That's kind of how it arises. So all of these things, and then learning to sit back and just wait, to be patient, to know that this thing will come after a while if you are patient. So that is the short-term establishing of mindfulness. But sometimes you do that and it doesn't really work. It never really becomes established. And the reason that is the case is because all the preliminary factors of the path are not strong enough yet. So you have to actually keep on working on the preliminary factors of the path. And those preliminary factors of the path are really the 6 factors before mindfulness meditation, before mindfulness. It's the first 6 factors on the Noble Eightfold Path. What are they? Well, the first 2 are really about right view, and the second 4 are about kindness, ethics. So right view and ethics are the 2 things that need to be established. Morality, very as strongly as you possibly can. And as you commit to those things, as you investigate the sutta, as you start to understand what the Buddha is talking about, the more you understand that, the more your view kind of aligns with all of this, the more ready you're going to be for your mindfulness is going to be more strong, and you're going to be able to establish the mind in the right way. Right view is what guides the mind away from the world towards the inner life instead. Ethics is what makes you feel good about yourself. You feel happy in the present moment. So these 2 building up together then allows meditation to occur. So this is what we should spend our life doing. We should do some meditation, but we should focus enormously on these other factors to enable this to happen. So having established mindfulness, only then should you start watching the breath. It's such an important thing here. And it's so often, I think, misunderstood in Buddhism. So we need to get this sequence right, otherwise you're going to be incredibly frustrated with your practice. So, having established mindfulness, parimukkang, we had one person who sent me a note, and he said that he said param, it's not actually paramukkang, it's parimukkang, but anyway, and he said that in modern Sinhala language, parimukka or pamukka means like priority or something like that. And sometimes it is translated as priority, setting it up as a priority, but I think it means a little bit more than that. It means also something about, like here, right there, in other words, in the present space and in the present time, something like that, Because the breath is here, This is the present breath you want to look at, not some other breath, not some dream of the breath or anything like that. Anyway, we're not going to go into that. There are scholarly papers written on such things as the one word parimukkang is written, probably, books on that particular word. That's kind of how the world is, this world of intellectual achievements, etc. But so once that mindfulness is established, then what happens next is just mindful, you breathe in. Mindful, you breathe out. Mindfulness has been established already. You don't need to do anything else than just breathe, because you are already aware. And now because you are aware, you will be aware of the breath. You don't have to do anything. That's why it says just mindful. No willpower, no need to direct the mind, no need to force yourself or anything like that, because you are ready. And because you are ready, it happens automatically. Just mindful, nothing else. Then we come to the first 4 stages. Yeah, now we are kind of established. Now we are kind of ready for mindfulness of breathing. And now comes what is famously known as the 16 steps of mindfulness of breathing. And these 16 steps are grouped into groups of 4. So we have 4 times 4, 16. And each of the 4 corresponds to one of the satipatthanas that I mentioned before. According to the Satipatthana Sutta, there's 4 satipatthanas: body contemplation, feeling contemplation, mind contemplation, and mental quality contemplation. 4, and each one of these groups corresponds to one of those. So the first 4 here corresponds to body contemplation. So let's see how this is done with the breath. When breathing in heavily or long, they know I am breathing in heavily. When breathing out heavily, they know I am breathing out heavily. When breathing in lightly or short, they know I am breathing in lightly. When breathing out lightly, they know I am breathing out lightly. They practice breathing in, experiencing the whole body. They practice breathing out, experiencing the whole body. They practice breathing in, stilling the body's motion. They practice breathing out, stilling the body's motion. So that is the contemplation of the body through mindfulness of the breath. And it starts off by breathing in. They know that they are breathing in like a long breath or a heavy breath. When you start out with your meditation, and very often your breath is going to be a bit heavy still. I guess you haven't really calmed down properly. So there will be the sense of the breath being a bit long and heavy. So that's what it's like when you start out, and you know that. There's nothing more you need to do than to know, to be aware of the state of the breath. This is not something that you need to create. You don't create a heavy breath. It is just that it shows you the natural progression of the meditation, starting with a heavy breath. This is an important point, because sometimes people think, you have to follow the sequence. So if your breath is kind of short, you kind of make it heavy on purpose, but that would be missing the point. The point is just to know and to be aware of what is going on. So the breath is long, the breath is heavy. So you know the breath is long, going in, going out, going in, going out. That is the kind of the initial point here. And then as you progress, the breath then becomes a little bit lighter. Sometimes it may be light kind of straight away, depending a little bit on the situation. And it kind of progresses in that way. And then you are aware of the lightness of the breath, or the shortness of the breath. Again, you are just aware. You don't need to do anything. It just happens automatically. But then with the next step, it says you train. The first 2 steps, it says you know. Now it says you practice or train. And the reason for that is because the first 2 steps, they are natural. If you are mindful, that is what you're naturally aware. But for this particular, the next one, which is experiencing the whole body, it takes time for that to happen. You have to just learn to sit back and to enjoy the experience. And as time passes, that is what happens. You start to see the whole body. It's like your awareness is expanding. Your awareness is more powerful, so you see more detail in what is going on. That is when you start to experience the whole body. So it's not, when it says practice here, it doesn't mean you do anything. It just means it takes time. You have to stick with the object. Then over time, your awareness expands naturally. It expands to experiencing the whole body. What is the whole body? This is very controversial. What is the meaning of whole body? Sabbakaya patisangvedi is the Pali word. And some people say that this refers to experiencing the whole physical body, like sensations in the body, sensations coming and going. Other people say it means the breath, because the breath can be called the whole body. And I think it means the whole breath, to be honest. And the reason is because we're doing breath meditation. That's a pretty good reason, right? You got to admit you're doing breath meditation, and not only that, But it says at the end of this thing, it says that the breath is one body among bodies. It's specifically pointing to the fact that the breath is called a body. So in this context, it refers to that. Yeah. So and the commentary says it means the breath. Yeah, the body here, whole body means the breath. So there's lots of evidence that shows that it means the breath. That's what I go with anyway. Yeah. Some people still argue that it means the body, especially those who do the Goenka meditation, because that's what they argue in the Goenka meditation, and it's okay. Yeah. If you find that you want to stay with the body for a while and then come back to the breath later on, and if that is a natural progression for you, then do it. As long as it works, it's not a problem. In Buddhism, what works is good. So just make sure it works in the right way. It just doesn't just work according to your own ideas, but it works according to the Buddhist path. That kind of matters as well, right? So sometimes people say, oh, it works for me, but actually it's got nothing to do with the Buddha's teaching. Then it becomes problematic, yeah? So works for me is not always good enough. It has to work for you and be in accordance with the kind of the purpose of the teachings. Otherwise, it becomes silly. Yeah? So, so it's sometimes an academic argument. It doesn't matter so much. But to my mind, it clearly means the full awareness of the breath. So you see the breath in more detail. You don't just know that the breath is long or short, yeah, but you have more kind of clarity about the various stages of the breath. You see the breath, more clearly. Your mindfulness is sharpening up, and this is what I take this to mean. And then the next step is the step where it says here, you are stilling the body's motion. Kaya sankarang pasambati, or something like that. And this means, the body's motion here, kaya sankarang, is the breath. Yeah, it is actually defined as the breath elsewhere, and because that is what is left in terms of activity and motion in the body at this point. Things are already becoming quite peaceful and calm. It doesn't take that long before things start to become quite delightful in this meditation practice. When you're calming down the body, you're aware of the whole breath. You're not really distracted by anything. If you have awareness of the whole breath, there's almost no distraction going on. You're very solidly aware of things. It's already very delightful, especially if you are really relaxed about it. You are more just aware rather than focusing and using willpower. So you are now stilling the body's motion. You're calming the breath down. This is what's going on here. And this is a point where people sometimes lose the awareness of the breath. There's always someone who talks about this, I'm losing the awareness of the breath. Why do people lose the awareness of the breath? And there's a few reasons for that. One of them is that your mindfulness is not sharp enough. It's a little bit dull. It doesn't have that kind of clarity to be able to see what is going on. You're obviously still breathing. Otherwise, we have to call the funeral home and kind of get you taken away. But you're still breathing, obviously. So there's something going there. So it's just a matter of noticing it. There's obviously some motion in the body somewhere. It's just that the mindfulness is not sharp enough to pick it up. So one way of dealing with that is to make your mindfulness sharper by bringing some joy into what is going on. When there is more joy, there's more sharpness of mindfulness. You see more clearly what is going on. Another thing, you can just stay with the peace. If it is peaceful and nice, you can just stay with it and see what happens. And as long as you don't panic because the breath isn't there, you don't need to panic. The body knows how to breathe. You don't have to worry about it. So you just kind of relax, be with the peace, and then see what happens, see where it takes you. And if you really enjoy the peace can become more deep, and then the breath might reappear again because your mindfulness gets sharper. Or you may go slightly backwards, and the breath becomes more coarse, and then you go back to the previous stage, and then you kind of carry on again. There's different possibilities of what may happen at that particular point. So this is the idea. The idea is basically to calm things down, to make things more peaceful. And at this point, as things calm down and they become more peaceful, then you also at this point, sometimes this is when joy and gladness may start to arise in the mind, and then you make the transition to the next 4 factors of this practice. Yeah? And the next 4, they are equivalent to the Vedana Nupassana, the contemplation of feeling in the Satipatthana Sutta. Yeah? This is what the next 4 are equivalent to. So we're kind of going through the 4 Satipatthanas here, stage by stage. So let's see what it has to say about that. They practice breathing in, experiencing rapture. They practice breathing out, experiencing rapture. They practice breathing in, experiencing bliss. They practice breathing out, experiencing bliss. They practice breathing in, experiencing these emotions. They practice breathing out, experiencing these emotions. They practice breathing in, stilling these emotions. They practice breathing out, stilling these emotions. So, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Rapture, bliss, and then experiencing the rapture and the bliss, and then stilling the rapture and bliss. I mean, this is pretty cool. What is very noticeable about this is the incredible emphasis on happy feelings. Yeah, it's just kind of relentless, one happy feeling after the other. There's not even a smidgen of pain mentioned in here. Not even the tiniest bit of suffering is actually mentioned. That is very fascinating. It is very fascinating because very often you will hear in meditation circles about the insight into pain. You stay with the pain. You learn about the pain by staying with it. But actually, this doesn't say anything about staying with pain. It talks about staying with happiness. Yeah, which one would you rather stay with, happiness or pain? You can choose. Yeah, I don't know. I know what I would choose, but so this is and the reason why it is so interesting is because if you read the Satipatthana Sutta and you read the explanation of the Vedana Nupassana in the Satipatthana Sutta, it talks about knowing all these kind of feelings. Yeah, and the feelings that are mentioned there is the painful feelings of the body or of the senses, the painful feelings that are mental, the neutral feelings, and the happy feelings. Yeah, so it talks about all of these kind of feelings. And yet here, in practice, all it talks about are the happy feelings. So how are we to kind of make these things gel? If in one place it talks about painful feelings, but here it only talks about happy feelings. And the answer is that Satipatthana is ultimately about understanding these feelings. And you don't actually have to experience pain to be able to understand pain. Pain is often understood by its absence, by its cessation, by the ending of these things. Yeah? So it is through the ending of things that you understand things much more than by observing them. And so these feelings are fully understood when, for example, you enter jhanas and these kind of things. When these things cease without remainder, then you gain insight into the painful feelings because they are gone, they have disappeared. You know that they're not an essential part of you, and then you can kind of abandon them altogether. So this is one of the great news about the meditation practice. It does not have to be painful. You don't actually require to sit with pain for long periods and try to understand what is going on. To me, this is one of the great misunderstandings of the Buddhist path, the idea that sitting with pain is going to be beneficial. And I think it comes from this kind of ingrained human idea of no pain, no gain. Yeah? In Buddhism, it's the other way around. No happiness, no gain. Yeah? That is the real, lots of pain and probably going backwards. And this is such an important point because I think this is something that is so much part of our culture, whether it is a culture in the West or anywhere in the world. This seems to be part of human psychology, a universal part of human psychology, that pain is somehow positive. You look at the world's religions, they always talk about kind of whipping yourself and torturing yourself, because by torturing the body you release the soul and this kind of stuff. But Buddhism is actually one of the few religions which talk about the middle way, and there's no gain to be had in torturing the body here. It's all positive feelings. Yeah. So it's good to be aware of that. So if you're not making progress in meditation, it's not because you're not enduring enough pain. That is not the reason. Yeah. It's not because you have to sit longer with more pain. No, the reason is something completely different. The reason has to be looked at elsewhere. And very often it's because the preliminaries of the practice are not established enough. That is more likely to be the reason. So it's good news, right? Maybe it's not news for you, but for those of you who it's news for, it's good news. So what does this mean? So rapture, rapture is the Pali word is piti, and these are like sensations of joy that you have, and they can be mental sensations, they can be physical sensations, like kind of currents of joy kind of coursing through the body. There can be a steady sense of joy that is there. It comes in various ways that you can feel this kind of joy, but it's a very kind of uplifting, electric feeling almost in the body that is very kind of light. And this is when sometimes it feels like you are kind of floating in the air and these kind of things, especially when this joy becomes very powerful. It's like it has this kind of uplifting feeling to it. And so this is the kind of the initial happiness that comes, and just through watching the breath, if you watch the breath in the right way. Now, one of the things is that sometimes people have, as I mentioned before, a problem with making the transition from just watching the ordinary breath, calming the breath down, as we saw in the previous step, and move towards the joy. Sometimes they have a problem. They may get peaceful, but the joy doesn't come. And so what do we do at that particular point? And this is where sometimes we have to nudge the mind a little bit. I've been using this idea of nudging the mind before, and the Buddha gives a large number of ways of doing that. He doesn't call it nudging, but that's just my terminology. But he talks about recollections, anusatis, and he talks about thinking about something in the past when you had a very strong spiritual happy feeling, you did something nice, you did a generous act, reflecting on the Buddha, the Dhamma, and all of these things, reflecting on your Kalyana Mittas, your good spiritual friends, whatever gives you that spiritual uplift, you just very gently nudge your mind towards that. Place your perception on something positive. Joy, a little bit of joy arises. You take that with the breath, and then you can kind of move from this, make this transition from just the body to the feelings. So this is where this little aspects of nudging can sometimes come in useful. And then once these feelings start to arise, you start to feel the joy, then your mindfulness becomes much sharper as a consequence. The focus now is on feelings, but the breath is still there in the background. So the breath is still the thing that anchors the whole experience. If you lose the breath and you just have the feeling, it can sometimes become a bit too unclear what is going on. So the breath is good like an anchor, but it becomes more in the background. The feeling becomes more prominent. So it's, but don't lose the breath completely, because then you're likely to lose your way sometimes in this process. And then you stay with the breath. It says again, practice. Practice does not mean that you do these things. It means you hang out and you stay with it. You keep your awareness on these things, and you allow the process to develop on its own. This is the process here. And as you do that, then that piti that often is quite physical in feeling, it feels throughout the body, it starts to become more refined. It calms down a little bit. Then it moves from piti to sukha. Sukha is here translated as bliss. It's a more refined, more powerful version of happiness. And then, as you carry on from that, it talks about experiencing these emotions. The Pali word is chitta sankhara, and chitta sankhara is usually defined as perception and feelings. So it is whatever perception you have that is there, the breath probably included as well, that's part of your perception. The feelings you have, you experience that whole kind of thing, and then you calm it down. You calm down the breath even more, you calm down the feelings even more, so it becomes even more beautiful, even more powerful, even more uplifting. So now you can start to see some of the general trends and ideas of what meditation really is about. And there's two things that you will notice here kind of stand out. One thing is the continuous tranquilization of things, calming things down. First you have the calming down of the breath, then you have the calming down of the feelings and the emotions, yeah? So there's this continuous calming down. This is one of the ways of recognizing whether your meditation is going right or not. Yeah, this is how you recognize it, whether it's actually leading to more and more tranquility and calm. The other thing that you see here is that the happiness, yeah, there is a joy and happiness continuously moving to more and more refined versions of happiness. This is the other aspect of meditation, yeah, calm and bliss, yeah, calm and bliss in ever more powerful versions of calm and bliss. This is the two ways to know that your meditation is heading in the right direction. Two of the main factors that you should look at in meditation. This is what you see here in this particular sutta as well. So that is the contemplation of feeling in brief. And then it goes from there and it moves on to the contemplation of mind is the next one, yeah? And this is equivalent to the third of the Satipatthanas in the Satipatthana Sutta. The Chitta, Nupassana Chitta means mind, Anupassana again contemplation. So we move on to mind contemplation. So how does this work? And so let's just read it out first of all to see how it is explained here. They practice breathing in, experiencing the mind. They practice breathing in, out, experiencing the mind. They practice breathing in, gladdening the mind. They practice breathing out, gladdening the mind. They practice breathing in, stilling the mind. They practice breathing out, stilling the mind. They practice breathing in, freeing the mind. They practice breathing out, freeing the mind. So this is the Chitta, Nupassana, the contemplation of mind. Yeah? And you may wonder what exactly is going on here. It is not entirely obvious. What does it mean to experience the mind? Yeah, we have just been feeling all these feelings, etc. So what does it mean to experience the mind? I mean, surely many of these feelings are already mental, yeah? So the point here is that to know what the mind is, you have to get rid of those things that are not mind. What are the things that are not mind? Well, they are the body and the five senses. Yeah, so here we are coming to the point where the body and the five senses are really fading away dramatically. And what is left is the mind. How do we experience the mind when the body and the five senses are gone? You experience it very often as what we call a nimitta. Yeah? A nimitta is like a bright light or something in the mind. And this is in the suttas it's called an obasa. A nimitta is like a modern word. In the sutta it's called obasa. Obasa means like shining, something shining in the mind. And rupa means form. Yeah? So it's like a form, a shape that you have, and a brilliant shape in the mind. And people see this in various ways. It doesn't have to be very strong initially, maybe like the moon, but it can also be very powerful like the sun in the mind. Yeah, it's like you feel you are blinded. Yeah, there are some very cute stories with this of people who are not used to these kind of things, and they kind of hold their hands up because they see this light. Yeah, but you can't block it out because it's in your mind. So even if you hold your hand up, it's still there. It doesn't make any difference. But that's kind of the feeling. So very powerful experiences. So this is what is happening at this point. How do you make the transition from the feelings to the mind in this way? And here it is where attachment to the body and the five senses can be a problem, yeah? Because now you're really starting to move away from the body and the five senses. So this is where, you can do this all the time really, but this is where maybe you need to nudge a little bit, just a very gentle perception of the sensory world being really unsatisfactory compared to what you're experiencing now. This is far superior. It is very easy to see at this point that this is far higher bliss than you have ever had in your entire life, and you're just starting on the path of bliss, and it's already superior. Yeah, so this is getting really pretty. No, I'm not going to use those words, but it's good. Yeah, it's really, really good. And so you nudge the mind in that way. bring up the perception, well, who cares about the world? This is much better. And you lean the mind in that way. And as you do that, you're able to stabilize that nimitta, and then you kind of move from just the happy feelings and also giving rise to this nimitta, the bright light in the mind at the same time. Sometimes it can be a bit unsteady when this happens, yeah? It is because it's kind of... sometimes people get excited by this when it happens. I mean, it's not surprising that people get excited. So this is why you need to learn just to enjoy whatever you have. And if you feel that there is an instability in your meditation, it's not really solid, then you go back, you stay with the feelings a bit longer until this stabilizes this perception. And when it's stable, then the transition happens usually automatically. You don't have to worry about it. And then it kind of just happens. And then you move into the realm of the mind, where the body, the five senses, and even the breath are really far behind, getting very weak. They are fading away, as we saw before, is kind of the idea here. Yeah? Here we have this idea of fading away again. And the breath may still be there, but the breath is now going to be very much in the background, and this powerful thing that you're observing is there instead. And then you keep on going. Yeah, you still haven't reached the end of this process yet. Then you want to make that nimitta even more bright. You want to make the experience even more powerful. And that is why it says you gladden the mind. Yeah, gladdening the mind means that you just, again, you stay with that nimitta and you're just absolutely peaceful. You don't do anything at all. And by just keeping your awareness, the brightness, the sharpness of the mind, the brightness of the mind becomes even more powerful, even more bright. Yeah, it is like... and so you keep on doing this. Things are becoming even more peaceful. That's why the next step is you stilling the mind. The mind is becoming more and more still. Yeah. How do you do that? By staying with the object, by focusing on the center of the object, yeah, and just enjoying it to the max. And as you do that, everything comes to even more stillness. There's no movement in there anymore. Yeah. You're just focusing on this beautiful thing, and there's nothing else going on in the whole world. So again, yeah, as I said before, there's two factors: more stillness, more happiness. The two things that almost define progress in meditation. And as you do this, there comes a point when the mind is freed. It's here called freeing the mind, but there's nothing that you do. It's just that you kind of allow the process to come to its conclusion. And that conclusion is called freeing the mind. And that is when you enter another world, so to speak. You're fully released from the body, fully released from the five senses, and you enter another realm. And this is called the Rupa Loka, the realm of form, where you enter a Jhana state or something like that, and you experience something that is completely different from what you have ever experienced before. It literally is another world. It's another reality that you experience at this point. This is the freeing of the mind. What is it freed from? It is freed from the body and the five senses, and it is also freed from the five hindrances. Yeah, this is what is gone completely at this point, and you enter this realm of pure stillness, pure joy and bliss, and that is all you experience. The duality that we always experience in the world, we always experience a duality. I am here, this is my experience. Yeah, the experiencer and the experienced. But at this point, there is a merger between the experiencer and the experienced, and there's only a single experience. There's a complete oneness. And because there is complete oneness, it is natural for people to think of this as experiencing God. Yeah? Why not? If there is complete oneness, if it's impossible to separate you from anything else, and it is the greatest bliss you have ever experienced, you have lost almost all your sense of self. Actually, it's all completely gone, really, for all practical purposes, because there's no doing anymore, anything like that. If you have a pre-existing idea of God, you say, this is it. I've experienced God. Yeah? Because that's what it feels like, something out of this world, and it feels like you have lost yourself. Where else could it be but God, if you already have that idea in your mind? So this is how extraordinary, powerful these things are. Yeah, and they would change you forever when you have these experiences. They will change you forever because these things are what Ajahn Brahm called a positive trauma. Yeah, traumas are negative if you remember them because they were so bad. But traumas are positive if the experience was so powerfully happy you can never forget it again. Then it's a positive trauma. And you carry it with you for the rest of your life once you've experienced these kind of things. So these then are the states, the things that are necessary or very, very useful to go even further. You still haven't come to the end of this. This is kind of what is so astonishing here. You have the most amazing experience of your life, and you still haven't come to the end. You can still go further. And there's two things you can do at this point. You can keep the freeing going. You can go to deeper and deeper levels of freeing that are more and more blissful, more and more profound. And these are the sequence of jhana states, deeper and deeper. But also, you can gain lots of insight at this particular point. And this is what the very last 4 stages of this Anapanasati Sutta is about. It's about insight, how to gain insight from this particular process. And this is what then comes up next here. So this is equivalent then to the last of the 4 Satipatthanas, which is the contemplation of the Dhammas, the Dhammanupassana. So what is interesting about that large Satipatthana, when you read the Satipatthana Sutta, you will see that there is a lot of emphasis in that large Satipatthana on causality, why things exist, how they come about, why do you get the 5 hindrances? It's about understanding the nature of things, gaining insight into things. That is what that last Satipatthana is about. And this aspect here of mindfulness of breathing is precisely about that. It's about understanding impermanence, understanding how things are always changeable, and therefore also an understanding into causality here. But I'm not going to get into that now because we're already getting quite late. But that is the basic practice. Basic is probably the wrong word. You read Ajahn Brahm's book, The Basic Method of Meditation, takes you all the way to jhana states. I'm not sure how basic it is, but anyway, that's Ajahn Brahm. That's his kind of language for these things. So this is already quite magnificent and quite marvelous. And one of the important things to realize about this is that as you go through this process, this is largely a process of stilling the mind, making the mind happy. As you go through this process, you might think this is all about samatha meditation, calm meditation. But if that's what you think, you would actually be wrong, because this is also about insight meditation. Because it is impossible to move forward in this way without already having quite a bit of insight. This is why I've been talking about the whole process of right view. That right view that we use to enable this path to happen, to understanding those things that actually need to be given up, like the 5 sense world, that is insight already. You're building up an understanding for the world. And the further along you go on this path, the more understanding you get where real happiness lies. And that understanding of where real happiness is to be found, that is an aspect of insight. So you understand that. You understand something about the nature of the world being suffering, being problematic, being out of control, being impermanent, all of these kind of things. It happens through this process of meditation. So when we talk about anapanasati, it would be a mistake to think that anapanasati is only about calm. It is about calm and insight. And the reason it is about both is because calm and insight always have to go together. There are 2 aspects of one thing, and that one thing is called progress in meditation. And that progress in meditation always has 2 aspects. 2 aspects, calm and insight, samatha and vipassana. These things are not really separable. They always come together as a pair. So this is such an important thing to understand. So when people talk about vipassana meditation, it is just a particular technique. But the reality is that even for vipassana meditation, both calm and vipassana come together if it is the real thing here. Anyway, we can talk more about that later on, and if you have any questions about that, please ask later on at tonight. That is all for now, so we'll see you back again at 7 o'clock tonight. Very good.